You're listening to PatchBay on tymkrs.
Welcome to PatchBay, a conversational podcast all about audio equipment, music, audio engineering, recording, music production, live sound, that kind of stuff. Shane and I, we do this sort of thing sort of as a living. I don't know how wealthy we are at it, but we like doing it. So, hey, that's good. How you doing,
Exactly.
Shane?
I'm doing good, actually. It's a nice day today, sort of, and I'm up and feeling good, so this is always a good thing. So the last show we were talking about DIY audio equipment, specifically a DAC that a guy was building, which perked my interest in something that we had
Also,
sort
my
of previous-
converter box.
and your converter box as well.
You know, his project may not be done for years, but mine needs to get done much sooner. So
Yes,
it
and
counts.
said converter box. I'm curious to see the schematics for that once you got them figured out too, because the idea behind it makes a lot of sense. And you were sort of discussing that it was going to be toss linked to RCA.
The boxes that I'm going to be hacking go to stereo RCA,
I see. Okay.
but I'm basically just going to be using the left channel off of them and rewiring it to 1/4-inch panel mount
Okay.
jacks.
That's what I was
So
gonna say. Yeah,
it's
'cause
not
you're
complicated. The power distribution will probably just be a single 5-volt supply and just wire it up directly to the power on each of them, so that it only needs one outlet, and put a real power plug on the box, and it's done.
it's definitely a cool idea. Are you just drawing it up yourself, kind of hackery,
I'm
or
not even gonna draw it. I'm just gonna do it.
I'm just gonna do it, eh? I love this shit. Pardon me. Whatever.
It's not a complicated thing. So it's the sort of thing where I'll just take the parts and assemble them in the box and redo
not
what
as
I need
complicated.
to redo. Yeah.
It's not as complicated as reminding myself not to swear on a podcast, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. So yeah,
Long after you're dead, Shane, this podcast will still be out there somewhere. Your grandchildren's grandchildren will listen to this and they'll be like, "Great Grandpa Shane was kind of a bastard with a dirty mouth," because evidently they're Southern now.
Well, yeah, maybe we'll have moved down south and gotten away from the frigid, crappy winter situation that's going on currently.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Groundhog Day just happened, and the groundhog here, which is a puppet, it's not even a real friggin' groundhog. Probably because it's too cold for actual groundhogs.
They would die.
Yeah. Once again this year, he says that we're having another 6 more weeks of winter, which usually works out to 8.5.
Yeah.
And apparently, he's been 100% right in the last 15 years, and he pretty much always says that we get. So I wanted to start a Twitter thing
Maybe they should just move the spring date then.
death threats to Manitoba Merv is what they call him. But yeah, so I actually got retweeted by a local news organization. But anyway, yeah. So I think Puxatawny Phil or whatever his name is said that Pittsburgh's getting spring, but they always get spring before us anyway, so it's all good.
The local newspaper here keeps asking if they could come do a story about the studio, and I'm like, I don't want to clean it, so no. I don't want to pick up all these wires and stuff. Just leave me alone.
Yeah, this is the one problem that I sort of have with my studio as well, because the guy that sort of used to run the studio before me, he was sort of a very clean kind of OCD, put all the papers in the right order kind of guy, and I've got crap everywhere. Like it's just the way it is, man. I got XLR cables just sitting on a desk, and then it's never clean. Like I'll clean it before I go on vacation, and then as soon as I come back, it just ends up being silly again. It's just the way it is. And every good studio has crap everywhere. Like everybody knows how it works, and it's all wired correctly, but it's still
it's kind of a controlled explosion, right?
Exactly. You know where it is. Where was that 50? Oh, there's the 57. I know exactly where it was. So yeah. I like chaos. It's much smarter.
So, I
Yeah.
believe you had some other DIY projects you wanted to bring up this week to sort of follow on with what we were talking about last time.
Well, yeah, me and you had previously sort of discussed this, but I've always kind of obviously have to work my way up to it. As soon as I get a little bit of extra funds, I'm going to probably start trying to build a, guitar fuzz box, or I have this book called Electronic Projects for Musicians. So it's pretty fairly straightforward. It's actually written by um, he's the guitarist for the Eagles. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I'll put a link in the show notes. But so I'd like to sort of start doing something, that's a 9-volt battery kind of stump box sort of situation. But eventually, I always thought it would be cool to have a studio that was just as much sort of built DIY equipment as possible. Just as far as like, a couple of compressors, a couple of EQs, a few mic preamps, like just not 24 channels, but 8 channels of stuff. It'd be cool to have, just because like I mentioned before, you could, once you sort of figure it out, you can tailor, what electronic parts you're putting in to tailor the sound, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you've always liked the sound of the 1176, you could tailor something that would be similar to it, maybe not exactly the same, but the aspects that you like. And also, too, just for the sake of saying, well, my studio has this gear that I built. Nobody else has this gear, from a marketing standpoint, I guess. But yeah, it'd just be kind of neat. And they used to do this all the time, back before manufacturing really took off. Lots of studios had, their own EQs, and like I know Abbey Road, and even before that, they all sort of had their own stuff that they built, because a lot of the stuff, there wasn't a lot of manufacturers at the time,
Yeah,
so
and they also used to have on staff engineers, like electrical
yeah,
engineers. So
yeah. Well, they
totally.
used to have, yeah, you used to have get permission to like move the tape machine and stuff like that. So, and they'd have guys in white lab coats come out and actually move, microphones, or the tape machine or something. Like back in the day, the recording engineer was the guy who just basically ran the equipment. He wasn't allowed to sort of move anything. Um, so yeah, I mean, it would just be nice to sort of have something that you sort of hand built yourself. Obviously, you can appreciate that, but yeah, that I always thought that might be kind of a fun thing to sort of strive for.
Yeah, I've had that same fantasy. Yeah.
It's coming up with the cash to do it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily less expensive to build these things yourself.
No.
Not even getting into the time um, aspect of that. Uh, take you years just to get to the point where you could build these things.
Yeah.
So
Well, no, that's exactly the case. Yeah, and starting from where I'm going to be starting from, it's sort of a pipe dream at this point. But it's good to sort of shoot for something like that anyway. I was going to say, I was going to quote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the time is an illusion, lunchtime doubly so line. But anyway, that's all I really wanted to talk about, just about the DIY thing. As far as, I would like to get into that eventually, but baby steps, start with guitar pedals and see how I go from there.
totally. And I did make a video for you quite a while ago now, showing you how to solder on the back of uh,
Breadboard.
yeah,
Yeah.
solderable breadboard. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that'll come in handy when I
you're a
finally get.
slacker for not have done and not have have done
I
anything
know.
with that yet. So
Yes, and I'm sorry about that.
solder's cheap, man.
I know solder's cheap. I just need to get a friggin' gun and set up a station in my basement somewhere. That's the other thing that I have to do. I
So
am.
yeah, anyone out there with extra soldering iron or anything like that, let us know. We've got a good home for it up there in Winnipeg.
I do have a multimeter actually, but it's a VU one, so it's like old school, old school. So, which is okay.
All right.
Hmm.
And last week towards the end of the show there, we brought up the ongoing design and prep work that's going on here at the Toymakers studio for our big rewire.
Yeah, and I just got the. I was asking Whisker if he could give me the layout, and
You
I have,
guys may have seen this already because we probably put it in the show notes last week.
and it's friggin' color coded, which is awesome. So yeah, if you want to go to last week's episode on PatchBay.tv.
I'll put it in the show notes for this week too, obviously.
Right. Well, we want them to go back to the site and re-listen to a bunch of old episodes that they haven't heard in a while, right? Anyway, we'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, if you want to pull it up, we can take a look at it together, as it were. So my first question, what's BM1E on the far right-hand side? I'm just trying to figure that out.
Okay, so BM1E is BMIE, and that's the Blackmagic Intensity Extreme. It's on the newest Macs, they've got a new I/O port called Thunderbolt.
Okay.
And it's like crazy, like 10 gigabit per second throughput speed on it. And when I got my Mac Mini that we used to record here, it was one of the first machines that had that port on it. And shortly thereafter, Blackmagic, they're a company that makes a lot of really good professional level video stuff, came out with one of the first devices that you could actually plug into a Thunderbolt port, which was their Blackmagic Intensity Extreme, which does live HDMI video capture. So if you've got anything that puts out an HDMI signal, like let's say, bad example, DVD player, bad example because they have like that protection built into them, but if it didn't have that protection,
DVD player.
well, you're in Canada. You guys have.
You don't have DVD players, dude. No, I'm just joking. Yes, we have. That's true. You guys.
We have more DRM crap on our stuff than you guys do.
My God, DRM.
Yeah. So, but if it didn't have that on it, then this little box here could basically allow you to video capture it direct to an H.264 file, or to use it as a source for streaming, which is what a lot of people will do. They'll use their Xbox and play their game, and they'll stream it over the internet so people can watch them do like speed runs and stuff like that.
Right.
So in this case, the BMIE is being used to do a live encoding just for live streaming out of the program HDMI output of the video switcher. So normally that's what you'd be sending out to your transmitter if this were an analog TV station, right? You'd be sending that signal off to your transmitter. But in this case, our transmitter is the internet. So we want to convert it into something like Ustream or Livestream or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you can do that with the ATM television studio video switcher itself. You could use it as a source for your live stream, but we're recording live to an H.264 file with that box. So we're saving that stream to a file, so that we can post it on YouTube or whatever. Mm-hmm. But with the BMIE, we have a secondary encoder running in hardware that's not taking up any CPU there, and we can use that to feed a live output of when we're recording. So eventually you guys might be able to watch us record the show live.
That'd be slick. The one thing I am going to mention, you're going to need some crazy hard drives as well.
Yeah,
right?
One of the Hackerspace guys here, for those of you who don't know, the bottom level of our house is a Hackerspace, because that's just kind of the people we are. One of the guys works over at the IBM building here in Rochester, and he has the ability to get lots of hard drives.
Handy. Okay. Well, yeah, because I was going to say, once video becomes part of the equation, yeah.
Well, video is already part of the equation here. I produce 3 video shows a week and 3 audio shows a week, and eventually we'll be switching all of them over to video. So, 6 video shows a week. If we were to switch today, that's a lot of freaking encoding. I tell you what. That's why I'm interested in switching over to a live to tape situation, so that I can cut out 50% of the work that I'm doing now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, just your rendering time alone, this
Yeah,
way it's sort
rendering
of,
and editing take up a lot of my time.
oh yeah, that's a lot of farting around for sure. So I'm just following the chain. So all of the inputs, the live in studio inputs or the studio PC Skype calls, um, what EQ are they going into? EQ in channel one, EQ in channel two. I know.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I've got
so
a two-channel multi-band EQ.
okay.
So those will be EQs that are sitting on the that converter box that we were talking about last week.
Mhm.
That'll be feeding into the EQ, and
So it
then
hits the EQ before it hits the converter box or after?
after, I think, yeah, it would
Okay.
have to because that's in the analog realm. So the
Right.
converter box
Right.
that converts from toslink to quarter-inch outs will be between the Skype PCs labeled here PC1 and PC2, Studio PC1, Studio PC2, and the analog multi-band two-channel EQ.
Cool. And so it goes. The UX8 is the tone port.
Yeah,
So everything goes into
MDX is a
port.
4-channel expander limiter compressor gate.
Okay, that's what I was. Okay, so everything is going into the um.
So when
So
we're doing
technically,
recording studio stuff, which is what we would normally be talking about on this show, you're wanting to get
oh,
your dynamic signal into the recording, but when you're doing live to broadcast, that's not necessarily what you want. You want to have everything limited, gated, compressed before it gets broadcast so that all of the levels are automatically peaking at the same decibel level. And yeah, it's taking care of any of the plosives and all of that live as it goes in.
or as much as possible. So microphones 1 and 2 go into the UX8, back out again into the MDX, and then back into the
Yeah,
UX8.
we're taking advantage of the matrix routing there. I can route from the preamps in the UX8
Right.
and then route them right back out the line outputs. So I can
Right.
have the volume controls right here on my fingertips because
And less delay too.
maybe I'll put a photo of the studio desk in the show notes as well so you can see where the mixer is. It sits directly between the two host seats here in the studio. So I've got my hands on it at all times and I can
So
ride the mics here too.
and that's input volumes.
Yep,
Yeah.
on the preamps.
Yeah, I was gonna mention too, you can always put up that video of when you rip the rack apart, which I watched the other day and felt sorry for you. I've done
Yeah.
that before. I actually wired 32 channel board, and we actually soldered the patch bay too. It was TT. So anyway, it was inside a rack type desk that was built, and the desk is about 4 feet deep, but it's got 19-inch spaces. So I'd have to take a picture, but when I had to rewire the thing, I had to shove my whole body inside the 19-inch space just to figure out where the cables were sort of coming from and to do the rewiring. So that was entertaining because there's 32 tape in, 32 tape returns, 32 insert patch points, and then all the insert patch points for all the rack gear that we used to have racked up as well. So there's a lot of following leads with the flashlight in your mouth because it was built from the floor up, kind of like a desk sort of thing. So yeah, wiring, it's fun though. Actually, I quite enjoy it. I know some people don't like it, but I do enjoy it. Anyway, this makes a total amount of sense now that I'm looking at it.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
also planning on doing a raised floor in here and then doing the whole desk built right to the floor with sides and covers and all that, so all of the wiring can happen under the floor through
Also,
channels.
interesting little DIY thing you can do with cabling to make it look less messy. Those black vacuum hoses that you can buy
Mm-hmm.
that are, yeah, we used to do that in the first studio I worked at. That's how everything was, because we just use it as a cover, so you'd have like 5 or 6 of these black hose looking things coming out from where the rack
Do
gear
you
was.
cut them down the side?
Yeah, but there's ones you can buy that are cut down the middle, so it's just basically like a circle that you kind of pull open, you put all the cables in, and you
Yeah.
pop, and it just makes it look a little more cleaner than having cables all over the friggin' place. They all tend to sort of go their own separate directions once you get them to, the top of the rack or wherever everything's going. But it looks a little bit more cleaner, and you can buy those things for like really cheap, depending on where you find them. But I remember getting like I don't know, 20 or something for pretty cheap. So that's what we ended up doing in the studio. Worked quite well. And I mean, there's still a little bit of space on both ends that you can, it's not like the tubing goes all the way to the end of the ends, right? So, just kind of a handy little thing that you can do if you run into some, as it were.
Yeah, you can buy that in smaller sizes too in the automotive department of
Yeah,
various
exactly.
stores, and I've used it for um, wiring up the inside of PCs pretty
Yeah, you can get
nicely.
like 5 foot pieces would probably be more than enough. I mean, it doesn't have to go all the way to the rack or all the way to, the console, but even just having it a little bit where people can see cables, it looks a lot better than 50 cables hanging. You know what I mean? So, but that's just like an aesthetic thing. Once again, we were both discussing how, we don't clean the studios anyway, but it's just one of those little things. The other thing I was going to mention to you when I noticed you were unplugging um, the rack, um, getting a label maker or or even tape and writing down things as you're plugging them in. It just makes it quite a lot easier than. Do you do a color coding scenario when you're plugging the rack in?
Yeah, well, it changes so often as because we're still building up the
Right,
studio, right? So it's always
right,
changing, and um, once we're to the point, I don't know if this will ever happen, but obviously I've got a flow chart here, so
right.
um,
Follow the
at
flow
that
chart.
point, I think I could probably start labeling things. And that would make my life easier. Being a live sound guy, I'm used to having like a 32 channel board that's all labeled up with all the XLRs in the back are all labeled down to the snake feed and all
Yeah.
of that. So, yeah, I know. I know.
Some of the snakes that you can buy, like the quarter-inch snakes or whatever, they're usually color coded. So there was for a while, and I can't remember what the color coding is, but it was like red, green, blue, yellow, white, gray. There was a way of doing it every time the same way, so that you much like odd numbered things on the console usually go left, and even ones are usually right when you're recording to tape or
Yep.
whatever. Same kind of concept. And that was kind of reminding me of something else. Oh, I was going to say, I remember this one time. This is completely off topic, sort of. We were doing some work on our console, and there's a guy who was doing some fix it repair on the actual console, like changing caps and stuff like that. And he went and some of the cables were sort of bugging him, so he went and took like a tie wrap and tie wrapped a bunch of my cables together. And don't don't let anybody ever do that to you,
Yeah.
because that's A, bad for the cable, B, bad for the engineer's hands when he's trying to take the tie wrap off with an X-Acto knife and cut himself. So yeah, if you have to sort of hang that stuff together, do the black thing that I was talking about, the black tubing, or um, elastic bands, or even like shoelaces or
One thing that we
something you
use
can undo quick.
here a lot are plastic cable management clips. Parts Express sells them in various sizes. Basically, the ones that I like to use have a little hole in them so that you can screw them into whatever, and you
Hmm.
sort of have a choice. You could screw it so that it's held close, closed, or you could screw it in so that it's mounted to something, but it can still open and close a little bit. And because we built our own studio desk here, I can put as many holes in it as I want. So I just, screwed these little cable management clips all over the place. And you just, as you're rewiring things, you can just sort of tuck the wire onto the clip, and it's really easy to pull them back out without having the issue that you get with the ties, where you only need to pull one wire out. You don't need to, to move them all.
Exactly.
So,
Well,
yeah.
and the other thing too is there's also those Velcro ones that are kind of handy. It's just the tidying up sort of thing that we always think we're going to do, but never actually get around to doing. I don't like those tie wraps though on mic stands, because guys will always tend to fart around with my mic cables, and then they'll like tie it straight to the stand, and then I got to move it, and I'm like pulling, and I don't know if you ever had that happen, but you can't go anywhere because the cable's tie wrapped to the friggin' stand, so it's like, don't do that. I just hang it over the boom mount, and then that way I've got some movement. But as far as cables that are never moving ever again, I usually try to like tie them up as best I can. That way they're off.
On our
Anyway.
boom mics here in the studio, I've got little plastic clips that snap onto the boom, and on one side of them they have a spot that has a pass-through hole on it that's just the perfect size for XLR cable. And so the cables are managed nicely on the booms. These don't need to move very often, so it's good that they're clipped up and don't get in the way.
Yeah, exactly. I was just looking at the monitoring audio chain, left-right stereo mix to S-Box.
Yeah,
The S-Box.
you could think of that as a stereo tip ring sleeve to tip sleeve, kind of like an insert cable.
Okay.
So basically I don't
That's your
have a
headphone
bunch
box.
of those, so I just make some project boxes that have 3 jacks on them and wire them up correctly internally, and then I can plug 2 monos into the left and right, and then get a nice stereo
mix
out of
for
it,
headphones. Yeah.
As long as it's not balanced stuff, it works fine that way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, no, I was just curious. Cool. We need to get you like a toy maker stamp or something, and you can put on all these boxes that you're creating.
Yeah, I'd like to do some sticker design or something like that. It would be fun.
Yeah, you really should. Something like that anyway, just for that kind of
Every
stuff.
every time I go to sit down and do that, I start looking at like old equipment to get ideas, and I see those chrome decals, the metal ones that used to be on everything, like Magnavox.
Yeah, exactly.
Or,
you can always try to come up with something that's similar to that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
looked into actually having some metal ones made up, right? Or the way they do it now is they have plastic and then they put like fake chrome over it. But having a bunch of them made up so I could put it on all my custom stuff, but it's super expensive.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's really just like ego-ness, really, when you're doing stuff like that. But I would get stickers, not ego-ness, but yeah, it's like, I made that, so I'm going to put a stamp on it, whatever, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, I would get some stickers or something, because that's just kind of badass.
So that monitoring audio chain makes sense to you?
The monitoring audio chain, yeah, no, that makes total sense.
This is a very specific problem with a very specific solution here.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So how does your dual monitoring out your line outs to So you're listening back to your microphone?
Yes.
Okay. You're that's where the S box comes into play then, basically, right? Because
we're taking the 2 microphones here in the studio. They come out on mono lines, right? And then we're putting them into the stereo box
Right,
so that the two mics come out in both channels on the headphones.
and then they go. I'm just figuring. What I'm trying to figure out is how you get your two mics to go to PC number 1 and PC number 2 outs to Skype. That's what I'm trying to
Out to
figure.
Skype, the PC line in, PC2
Right.
line in, PC1 line in.
Right.
Those are basically just line outs off the mixer that go to the line ins on the individual computers. Hopefully we don't get any noise back down those shields, because that would stink.
Yeah, that's something too. I'm guessing some of the guests on these shows will get roped into helping sort out. I'm totally game, helping sort out monitoring problems. Like just prior to going live again, once everything is been rewired. Just I check 1 2 check. Yes, I can hear you. Check. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of that when we do major studio changes, and yeah,
For sure.
I think this one has been in this state since we started doing this show, so you haven't been through that process yet.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I can see once this is figured out, it's going to make a ton of sense for sure. Yeah. Cool. No, it totally makes sense to me just looking at it.
I've never called into this show. How does the monitoring back sound, Shane?
There's those rare occasions when there's a bit of a delay, but we can blame that on Skype. But no, you sound clear and clean, which I'm fairly amazed at, considering you are going back through a line out to get to me, right? Like an
what you're hearing
line
on the Skype call,
yeah,
is the I'm using the matrix router in the tone port to tap a line out that's has a stereo panned to center mix of.
Yeah, it sounds like you're standing right beside me.
Of my mic and Addie's mic. She's not on this show, but if she were, you could hear her as well.
I have to talk her into being on the show at some point in time.
Say hello, Addie. Hello. She's on the show somewhere.
There you go. She's on the show. As well.
So the line out stereo pair off the back of the mixer, I just dedicated 2 channels of it. And we're feeding that through one of those little LR to S boxes into the line input on the Mac, and Skype has the line input selected as its microphone source, and that's what you're getting. Yeah,
no, it's clean as hell. It's far cleaner than what's happening on my end, so I need to definitely play around with this a little bit more, because it's basically the same idea, except for mine's got more analogness to it.
Well, what you're doing starting last week and now this week with the little mixer, I'm sure with your mono input pan to center, and then using the main outs of that mixer to feed the line in of the computer, or the mic in of the computer.
It's actually the mic in.
That's what I do in my office to be able to run Skype in there. Just for chit chatting, not for recording.
Yeah, well, for the time being, this is we'll have to do. I'm hoping it's better, but I'm guessing we'll see after last week's podcast.
It's good enough until I get the problems sorted out on this end with how the your audio is coming into the system here. It's good enough until I get that fixed, and then there'll be room for improvement.
And then we're just basically dealing with Skype, really. No, cool. I mean, I can always run a compressor on the way out before it hits the mic.
That actually helps a lot. I've got a 2-channel compressor in my office that sometimes I use on my I've got a Heil boom in there with a Shure 55 SH2, the Elvis mic.
Yeah.
Mounted on the end of a nice studio Heil boom on my on my desk in my office that I use for Skype. Because
for Skype.
For Skype. Because you gotta look good when you're Skyping, right?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but that's dynamic mic, so it doesn't have nearly as much oomph as I'd like. I like to use the condensers with Skype because they have a lot more output. So I run that through a compressor and get a lot better results. So that might be a really good idea for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I have one kicking around at somewhere around here, so I'll take a look and take a look and see. I know I had some stuff kicking around, so and I just today I just had to. It was just quick and set it up. I wanted it to be better than it was, right? So
Yeah,
anyway, how are we doing?
we're out of time.
I thought so. Oh
Yeah.
darn.
So, all you listeners out there, if you have any questions on the whole live to tape studio diagram thing, totally send us questions. You know how to get a hold of Shane. If you're coming through that side, to get to me directly, Twitter or feedback at tymkrs.com is the email. And we'll happily answer any questions you guys have about this. If you've got any suggestions on how to make it better, I would be one, impressed, and two, because it's really like it uses
convoluted,
every ounce of
but
that
yeah.
UX8. So if you can improve on it, let me know. But yeah, I'd love to hear people's feedback on it because it's really freaking expensive. And yeah, when things cost that much money, it's good to think about them really, really, really well in advance.
Exactly.
Yeah, so let us know. We'd love to hear back from you guys. Thank you for listening. That's all the time we have for this week. You guys can find this show every Friday at patchbay.tv. There's an RSS link there if you want to have it automatically downloaded to your phone, iTunes, whatever you use. You can, of course, just listen to it on the page. A lot of people do it that way, and it works just fine. That's it for us. We'll see you guys next week.